Welcome everybody to this episode of The Quiz Makers. My name is Mike Hawkins. I'm one of the founders of riddle.com, and we're really super big into all things quizzes and marketing and everything else. And because of that, I'm actually really excited to have Laura Field on the call.
Hi, Mike. It's nice to be here.
Welcome, Laura. Sorry. Laura is a savvy PR professional, and she's been helping us out with getting the word out about Riddle, but also just kind of as an ancillary benefit of all things quizzes and marketing and everything else. So welcome, Laura.
Thanks very much.
And you are based out in Colombia.
Based in Medellin, Colombia, yes.
Okay. And I'm going to, of course, because I live in England, which is a weird thing. How is the weather in Colombia?
It's better than England, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Most of the year. At the moment, actually, it's kind of rainy season here in Medellin. So last night, for example, we had one of the biggest thunderstorms I think I've ever experienced anywhere. But no, for the most part, a lovely temperature. Medellin's known as the city of eternal spring, so that tells you everything.
Yes, and so I'm, again, this for the people listening, I'm not sure when they'll be listening. This is mid-July, and I'm in Manchester, England, and it has been rubbish weather for pretty much all of June and July. So, but anyways, Laura has graciously been shanghaied into being on this podcast, but we wanted to get you on the podcast because just because you've been doing so many interesting things from a public relations background and just from a number of things. And actually you transitioned into PR, right?
Yes. So my bachelor's degree was in languages and literature. So I love the written word, the spoken word, translations, communication. And I think I was never sure of what I wanted to do afterwards. So after graduating, I actually moved to Dublin, Ireland. Obviously a huge tech hub, so it was kind of impossible not to work in tech when living in Dublin. And so I worked in a number of kind of different roles, one of which was a contractor at Google in their recruitment, one of their recruitment teams. But I was really kind of soul searching, kind of figuring out what I really wanted to do. And PR cropped up because it comprises so many things. So I'm a real fan of the news and current affairs. I'm nosy, I'm curious, I like to know what's going on. As I said, I love communication. I think people interacting with each other and internationally, as a linguist, I find that really interesting, how we communicate in different ways on different continents. And I love writing and editing, kind of getting to know people. So, the media relations side of it, and meeting journalists, but also businesses and helping them to spread the word about what they're doing. And so all of these random things, come together really nicely for PR. And so that's why I decided that that's what I'd like to be working in.
Fantastic. Yeah. So again, in the interest of transparency, we've been really happy working with you. I guess it's been about 18 months now.
Yes, I think actually less than that, but it feels like, nice 18 months, but it's, not.
Yeah, well, it's been really fascinating because you've been able to quickly suss out what we need and come up with some really interesting, but also out of the box ideas. So for people who are listening, I think many business owners and startups, and, Riddle is still quite a small, lean team. They often kind of have this idea of PR. Oh, we'll just do some PR. And that'll be fine, and then it'll be like this magic button that can grow the business. You work with a wide range of clients. What advice would you give to small to medium companies who are looking to kind of grow their profile through the mystery of PR?
Yes, no, it's the perennial question with PR, I think, because in many ways it can be intangible, unlike something like paid ads, where you put the money and you see exactly what's happening. So for PR, it's really important. What I do, what I've always done and my colleagues do, is we set PR goals, and we obviously want to make them realistic but equally ambitious and make it possible to measure them. But we would always match these to business goals of the company, because that's ultimately, PR is part of the comms marketing mix, with the aim is to boost business and to aid growth. So I think it's really important for a business, regardless of PR, to have very clear business goals of, you know, with figures. We want to reach this by this time, and we then align our PR goals with that.
Okay.
And I'd say a second thing is really knowing your target audience, who you're trying to speak to at any given time. And this can be a different audience at different times. Sometimes maybe you're trying to attract people to download your app, or it could be investors at another time. And so obviously they might be different people with different profiles. So really honing in who they are and their demographics, as much as knowledge as you have about your target audience, the better. And that then helps us in our PR efforts of working out which channels to go to, which media outlets, which journalists who are going to be covering topics and speaking to your target audience.
Okay, so it sounds like, and I'm kind of basing this on my experience from having shepherded a couple of startups through the growth phase, but there's it's almost actually the consumer, you know, the client essentially needs to say, hey, here's our rough goals, rough audience, and then you guys back out a strategy from that. So you're saying, hey, we need to, you know, basically we want to have X many eyeballs hit our website, you know, basically because of PR. Then you're like, okay, if that's true, then we need this and this and this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And what's so great about PR is there are so many, you know, as you said the phrase, to do PR, and it's true that people kind of think of it in that way. And there's so many elements to it. You know, it doesn't mean either attending or applying to be a keynote speaker at a conference. Does it mean us helping to look at your social media and what your messages you're putting out there on your owned media, or also looking at earned media? That's obviously a big part of PR is getting that coverage in relevant publications.
Sure. And actually, again, in the interest of transparency. So Laura, you work with Publicize, and we're big fans of you guys. I think it's been about 2 years or 18 months. I always forget but we really like your model because, again, for small to medium companies who are starting, you know, they don't have the big budgets to put an agency on retainer and pay them a flat, expensive fee every month.
Yeah.
So could you explain a little bit about your guys' approach and your model and how that might help kind of get startups in this space trying to, you know, kind of get the word out?
Definitely, yes. Sometimes PR, you kind of joke about PR not having great PR, you know, people being known as spin doctors and charging huge fees. But Publicize's ethos is the idea that, you know, we do PR for startups. Primarily, we want to help startups grow, and we understand that obviously startups have very varying budgets. So we have quite clear, transparent packages, and we kind of, you know, communicate very clearly at the start, like how many things we can be running at any given time. And so that helps us kind of structure what we're doing and helps the startup, you know, our clients understand what we're working towards, as opposed to, as you said, kind of bigger agencies with huge retainers and all sorts is going on, but it's kind of hard to track everything. So yeah, having clear packages at reasonable, realistic prices for startups.
So, and that's actually worked out for us, both from a budgetary perspective, but also from a time perspective. And that's actually going to lead to my next question. But so, you know, like, I guess the other thing about PR, it's not just an agency or you guys helping out. There's also big time commitment from the startup or the small company. So you have to know that you can actually support you guys, because, you know, I'm the subject expert. You're like, okay, we can get the word out, but there's a meeting of the minds. What are some of the bigger mistakes you've seen startups make? And you don't have to mention names, especially please don't mention us.
I definitely won't mention names. I think timing's important for PR, and it's difficult when you're an early stage startup. There are some core things that you need to have, like a website, some social media channels, what we call social proof, say, of the founder or the co-founders, you know, having a LinkedIn profile that says that you work at that startup, because ultimately we always look at, you know, I as a PR professional, I'm a curious person, but journalists and the media will be even more curious than me. And likewise, consumers, you know, I heard former colleagues say once that PR is essentially, when someone Googles you, what are they finding?
Especially on page one. you know?
Yes, exactly. And that's why obviously increasingly PR, as you well know, Mike, is linked to digital marketing and SEO. It all kind of comes together. So I think there are some core things that you need to have, but you're right that the time commitment really is something. It obviously, our job is to research and come up with ideas and work out. I kind of think of us sometimes as a matchmaking service between our clients and the media. And it's about timing, it's about ideas, and it's about making the two parties click, basically. And the more ideas that a client has, or the more they know who they want to speak to, or, you know, they're kind of browsing the news themselves and kind of say, hey, I've seen this in the news and I'd quite like to give that a shot. Obviously, that's really helpful for us and gets the client engaged. I'd also say time and skill for writing can be really important, because if, you know, our aim as a PR agency is to go out and get media interested in, say, receiving a guest article from our clients. And so if, obviously we can provide that service, but if the client doesn't want to do that or doesn't have the budget for it, then they'd need to know that they need to allocate time to write an article themselves, which takes us all longer than we think.
Oh, yes, absolutely. You are being very diplomatic, though. You have not mentioned any classic mistakes from startups. And it could just be misconceptions or...
Okay, yeah, misconceptions about what PR is. I think a really classic one is, so when we get interest from a media publication in having a guest article written, they want to be self-promotional and mention their product name and how and why it's great. And that's the tricky thing is, you know, if it's earned media, if it's an editorial piece, you cannot be promotional, because the editor's not going to accept it at the end of the day. It comes across as salesy and sleazy. It comes across as an advertisement. They would end up charging you. And the idea of PR and earned media is that we're putting you forward as an expert, as a thought leader in a particular industry or particular area. So pushing and plugging a product behind that
right.
doesn't work.
Right. No, so that's something you had help us out with as well, because, you know, we're like, oh, but Riddle's really good. You know, like, that's not what we're talking about. So
yeah,
that was been a very nice learning process on our side. So that's been super cool. Yeah, so I guess, well, so public relations, is that kind of like, and I guess earned media, it's that you're going to discover, or your potential consumers, if you segment and put yourselves in the right media outlets, etc., they should almost encounter you in the wild. And that actually kind of ties in a little bit with kind of quizzes, because that's our approach as well, where it's just like, hey, you're not flogging people to say, you know, check this out, check this out, check this out. Definitely. People are more naturally discovering you, hopefully.
Absolutely. And I think, as I've told you before, you know, I've stumbled across a riddle quiz on the BBC that I was sent by friends without even knowing it, and then seeing that it was powered by Riddle underneath. It was I was like, I work with these guys. That's a great coincidence. But I think, yeah, you're absolutely right that the quiz marketing that Riddle offers is in many ways linked to PR, because I think it's about a two-way street, really. It's being able to market something and to generate leads, but it's also about giving the consumer something in return. So with PR, with an article, you as the expert in quiz marketing at Riddle are giving them knowledge about the marketing industry in general, or whatever the topic may be. And likewise with the quiz, you know, if I'm a consumer taking a quiz, if I can find out what type of personality I am, or if I'm a kinesthetic learner, or whatever it may be, it's a two-way street, and it's much more subtle, and it's not plugging anything overtly, which I think always works better.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I know just for myself, when my guards and defenses go up, it's almost impossible to make a sale with me. But if I discover something and I'm like, oh, this is really interesting, I'm obviously naturally more enthusiastic, etc. I've actually, because you're super interesting to talk to, I'm going to wrap this up, because we like to keep these pretty short, just like quizzes. And I always like to end with this question, controversial, but what is your biggest pet peeve? And it can be about PR, it could be about clients, it could be about, hopefully not us, or it could be off, you know.
Okay, it's one that's going to make me sound terribly British, and it's kind of across the board in my personal life, professional life. Is just my pet peeve is lack of manners and rudeness. I think there's always a way to give someone feedback. It can always be constructive. I know that, yeah, we Brits are probably too easily offended sometimes, and we beat around the bush too much, which can be irritating too. I totally understand. But I think just if you're waiting in a queue for something and someone jumps the queue,
Ooh.
I find that really rude, not considering others. Or whether if it's in an email or message with friends and it's too curt and it's not empathizing with the other person. So it's a very subtle, picky British one, but it's definitely a pet peeve of mine.
Fair enough. No, it's very interesting to watch because if you listeners, we're actually doing this as a video podcast as well. I love watching the my guest reaction because you got really fired up about this, and I'm with you. Living in England, queue jumpers, just drives me absolutely up the wall. And also, this is very English or British, but they'll say like, "Oh, hey, how was the meal?" And a typical British response was either it's fine, but it wasn't really fine, or they'll say it was a bit something something. And I now know that's really bad. Whereas as an American, I said, "Oh, they're just tiny bit offended." So
yeah. Absolutely, and that's why I know we Brits can be annoying with that. Is we're not direct enough often, but a bit something. It's a bad thing to hear from a British person.
So for all of you listeners out there, if you are doing any work with British folk in general, definitely don't jump the queue and be polite. And if they ever say that's interesting or that's a bit whatever, you could be in trouble. So. Laura, thank you so very much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks very much, Mike.
Yeah, and well, enjoy the good weather in Medellin, and I will enjoy the rain in Manchester.
Thank you. Yeah, sunny British summer.
Great. Thanks, Laura.